The last and final chapter of this video is going to be doing post work on the character in Photoshop. It's rendered out from Modo and everything is fine. And you could post this online and in your portfolio or whatnot and call it a day. But we want to do this properly. Post work is an amazing tool when it comes to enhancing your work. And we're really going to take advantage of that. So the way we start off is by arranging our layers here. These are all the layers we have. We have the specular on top here. We have the ambient occlusion. We have the alpha. Then we have the final color output, which is the beauty. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to copy the alpha into the beauty. So we do this. We go into the alpha layer, copy, simply hit Ctrl+C, making a mask here, but going to the beauty and hitting the mask icon. Then we need to copy it into here, into the mask. So we do this by holding down the Alt key and clicking on the mask. Here we can paint around it, all the kind of stuff we want to do. Or we can simply hit Ctrl+V and we get the mask. Perfect. So now it has a mask to it. The very first thing I do after this, literally the very first thing, is I paint some kind of color here, just so we have something to look at. Because my eyes has a serious problem actually looking at this grid here. I get really nauseous by looking at this. So I just fill it in with whatever color I can find. Then we need to collapse the mask, because we can see we're gonna have like a 1 pixel fringe on everything here. You can see it. You can see it here. You will not have this if you use Nuke and 32-bit files, but Photoshop is a bit dodgy when it comes to this. So the way we remove this is by, first we need to apply the layer mask. Which simply just means we want to just bake the layer mask into the layer. So we go right click on it and apply layer mask. And if we zoom in here now, you can still see we have the fringe here, but now we can treat it. The way we do this is to go under layer, matting, and the fringe. So now you can see it's going to go away. And this is really useful. I do this for pretty much everything I do in Photoshop. But again, I try to avoid using Photoshop apart from painting with this. This is pretty much the only thing I use Photoshop for today in my professional workflow, or personal workflow for that matter, if I'm doing still images like this. So I'm going to fill the background in with something a bit darker. You get the color wheel up by holding down the Shift, Alt, and the right mouse button. You can just fill in with something dark. This is still just temporary, just to have something here. Then we can play with the ambient occlusion here. So as you can see, the ambient occlusion is just perfectly black and white. So we can set this to multiply. Multiply is really nice because this preserves all the blacks and removes all the whites. So now we can see we get this really nice and gnarly result. You really get all like the creases and all that kind of stuff. The problem is that it's way too strong. We can also try other blending modes as well, like overlay. This is simply going to make everything which is dark darker and everything which is bright brighter. So sometimes overlay can give you pretty interesting results as well. Same with soft light as well. But for this we're going to stick with multiply, and we're simply going to tone it down a fair bit. You can also do multiple layers of ambient occlusion. So you can have one which is really sharp. This is kind of in between, but you can have one which is really sharp, which only has this like nice little detail here, and then one which is broad, which will have like, you know, the big broad shape here. Then you can really control the ambient occlusion. But be a bit careful with ambient occlusion, because this is not a physically correct this is not a physically shader attribute at all. This is an absolute fake. You will never see ambient occlusion in real life, not true ambient occlusion. You can see shadows because stuff gets closer together, becomes darker, but you will never see ambient occlusion in real life. Then we have the specular amount, or the specular shading. We're probably not going to use this too much, but it can be nice to really enhance the specularity sometimes. So let's say you want more specularity somewhere. You can simply set it to screen, and you can just like pump it up, and you can reduce it down. So if you set this to subtract, you can now reduce the specularity. In a perfect linear workflow, we do this in Nuke, this is going to remove the specularity perfectly. But as we're not, this is going to do like an alright job, but not a perfect job at all. But I'm not going to use this too much. It's just a bit handy to have just because why not? So enable the ambient occlusion, and I'm going to simply just delete the alpha. I don't need this at all. So the first thing I do at this point, once everything is set up like this, is to start to paint stuff on top of the top of the model here. You want to be a bit careful with painting, because if you paint, obviously it will look painted. For this, it's not going to be a huge issue, considering that we're going for this kind of painted look. You can already see here the eyebrows are very painterly and all that. The hair is obviously completely painted. So, and still has some brush strokes here in the ears and all that. So this is not a huge concern, but if you're going for full-on realism, you cannot have brush strokes anywhere. Called painting. I'm going to set this to overlay. Now you can just start painting. I'm going to use a medium soft brush. So a brush which is like this. Yes. So the first thing I'm going to paint in is I'm going to paint in some values here. This simply means that areas are going to get darker and areas are going to get brighter. Because as I said before, with lighting, values are extremely important. So I'm just going to make some areas slightly darker. I want to make the eyes a bit darker, maybe the nose a bit darker as well, and maybe the mouth as well. Yeah. We can also add some variation on certain regions of the face as well. And if you paint with something brighter, meaning a color like this, it's going to get brighter. Again, you want to be careful with this as well, because this could give you really unnatural and painterly results, which if you don't want that, stay clear of this. But it can definitely be a nice way of just adding some, controlling the values of your piece a bit more. And you resize the brush by holding the right mouse button and Alt and just dragging. This is an awesome feature, which was introduced a couple of years ago. Actually, let's rename this to values. And let's do one called just general painting. So here I want to just paint a bit of variation here. I still want to set this to something like soft light. And I just want to paint some variation here. The reason I set it to soft light is it's going to react to what's underneath here. If it's just set to normal, it's going to overwrite whatever is underneath. And I don't want to do that, because then we get it looking really painterly right away. So just adding some variation lips there. Just trying to think that maybe he has some kind of cold sore on his lips, and some kind of, maybe something fractured. Just something which looks a bit sick on his lips here. So if you want something which looks appealing, keep stuff simple. Keep it visually simple. So if this was like an appealing set of eyes, or sorry, lips, it was an appealing set of lips, and you're doing like a beautiful woman, keep this simple. If you're doing a gnarly man like this, go to town. Add all this kind of like nice creasing and blemishes and all that kind of stuff. I'm also going to add some color variation to this, because there isn't a whole lot of color variation. There is still some left from the texturing, but the problem once you bring this into 3D, you lose a lot of color variation. So I'm just painting a little bit around here with some blues and maybe some greens as well, just to bring in more color variation. Color variation can really make a piece pop. A little bit more in the hair as well. Just makes it a bit darker around here as well, just so we have more contrast. And I also want to make the ears a bit redder, just to fake some surface scattering here. So as this is the final stage of the picture, anything goes. I mean, if you want to add subsurface to this, you don't have to re-render it. I mean, obviously, if you want to do it properly, you should re-render it, but you can fake a lot of stuff in post. So if it works, you know, just go crazy in post with this. There's absolutely no shame in doing proper post work on it. I mean, hell, that's a profession. I mean, that's a compositor. That's the only thing you do. Like you make stuff look really good in post. Adding some more redness around the nose as well, some more redness around the mouth region. Like just thinking maybe he has some like infection or something here. Or just like give some blemishes. Alright, so this looks alright at this point. Let's add some nice eyes. Like I said before, we're going to redo the eyes here. Because or at least enhance the eyes. Because as we remove the specularity, or the outer layer, which looks something like this, we need to reintroduce it here. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to paint some, he has blue eyes, so I'm going to paint a bit of blue here. Compare before and after, adding a little bit of like layering in this. Different saturation levels as well. You don't want this to go like this. You want to have like some subtleties. So some regions which a lot of saturation, and some regions with nothing at all. Then you can also add color variation to this as well. I want to make this like slightly greenish as well. Some green in the eyes as well. And obviously you can't do this for if this is animated, like if this is like a image sequence. So this is purely for still images. But the still images, you can cheat as much as you want to. Adding a bit of like the pupil back in here, just making sure this is dark and nice. And then we can add a sharp reflection. The sharp reflection I'm going to make fairly, a little bit orange actually, so it fits with light. I find that if you make the reflection big, it's going to read as cute. If you make the reflection small, it's going to read as more threatening. I want to add some more depth to this as well. Actually, I think it might look better if the reflection is white. Let's try this out. Now let's add a bit of color into it again. Alright, so something like this could work. Then I would just want to paint a little bit of variation here as well. Here, for instance, there would be something called the meniscus, which should just be like a wetness line around here. So just add a little bit of wetness here. And when painting wetness, you don't want to do this. You don't want to go 100% all the way, because this looks weird. You want to go a little bit of wetness, and then a little bit more. Something like this. Just brings us wetness in select areas. Same with the other eye, just being a little bit of wetness in certain regions. No, it doesn't really work. Let's try it again. Alright, looks a bit better. Again, if this was a proper personal piece, I would really sit down and make sure this was working properly. We have to just rush a bit through this because frankly we can't be spending 3 hours on this face here. But I just want to show you how I do this. This is also more of a bonus chapter regardless. I also want to add a bit of like cataract here. So currently it has very sharp eyes here, but I just want to like make it a bit more diffused. So I'm just going to paint a bit on top of this. Add a bit of saturation in this as well. It's a bit of like oranges and all that kind of stuff. Just so it looks a bit sick. Let's compare it before and after. So by doing proper eyes, you get a lot of life into it. So spend time on the eyes, really important. And as always, save the comp. Let's compare before and after. Yeah, definitely starting to look scarier now and more menacing. I also want to paint a bit more hair, or rather eyebrows here. Because this is obviously done very quickly. Just paint a bit more variation, just so it doesn't look so artificial. It will still look artificial, but like we can try to salvage it a little bit. Nope, doesn't work. If it doesn't work, kill it. Just don't try to fix a broken foundation, just erase it and start over again. Want to make it a bit thicker as well. Thicker and softer. So it just makes it look a bit more organic. So then I want to add some texture on top of this. So find some good textures like this. I believe you can find this picture here on cdtextures.com and just search for something like bones. Obviously we cannot supply this image with this tutorial, as I would probably infringe every copyright law on the planet. But once you find something like this could be bone based, it could be something like some general grunge or something like that. This can bring a lot of variation to your compositing here, or to your character. So scale down so you have something which works. And then simply set it to something like overlay or soft light. So you see already we get a lot of texture here. Problem is it's too bright and it's too textured. We obviously can't use this everywhere. So use levels, Control L to just make sure it fits with the overall scheme of this in terms of brightness. Let's see here. Let's also try saturation here. It's way too saturated. Actually, the brightness doesn't seem to be that bad. It's a bit too bright, but let's just make it a bit darker. All right, so something like this. And what I'll do is I'll mask it out. If you hold the Alt key and click on the mask button, it's going to erase everything. So now I'm going to simply just duplicate it a couple times. Hide them. Duplicate the layer by hitting Control J. Hide it, and then just paint with white here to reveal certain bits. Just to get some nicer texture going here. And if it doesn't work, just erase it out again by painting with black. But you have to be careful with doing texture overlay because it's really easy that it simply just looks like noise. You have to be very careful with that. Add it in select places. Don't add it everywhere. Don't just do this. And don't just do this and call it a day. This is going to look messy as hell. So just add it a few places here and there. Let's take this guy here and let's just move it around a little bit. Rotate it around as well and see if we get something cool. We're not going to use the line here in the middle here at all. We're going to try to avoid that. Let's just see if we can paint something in here. Going to decrease the saturation a little bit as well. Just too saturated right now. And let's just paint them out again. Paint some of this detail in here. Texture overlays can really bring a lot of variation into it, as long as it's done properly. Don't go crazy with this. Just remember, with great powers comes great responsibility. Same with alphas as well. You can add so much variation right away, which is really cool, but really dangerous, because it's so easy that your entire piece just becomes an absolute mess. So zoom out and see if it reads. Put all your textural overlays in a group and just like make sure, does it still read? Because if it doesn't read, you're in trouble. You can start adding some variation to the background here, because it's just a bit boring. So if it's bright here, I kind of want to make it a bit brighter here as well. So I'm going to color pick this and just make it a bit blue. Just get a little blue light here. It's too blue. Let's try this. I want it to be way paler. Something like this. Maybe a bit less green. And as I want to primary focus here, I'm not going to paint any like oranges here, like this, because this decreases contrast. If you want a focal point, keep the contrast here. So bright and dark. Here, I don't really care too much because this is like the third focal point. So bright and bright is totally fine. So now we have just some more variation here. Let's see what we're going to do next with this. You can just keep overlaying stuff until you're done, until you have to go to bed and there is no more time left, because you can keep doing this forever. So again, we just have to move on with this. Next step is going to be doing some grading on it. I like to do a lot of grading here using color lookup, black and white, color balance, and sometimes vibrance and brightness contrast. First thing we're going to try is brightness contrast. I call this the group, color group grading, or color correct. Let's just increase this. So, more contrast. The problem with adding more contrast is it can oftentimes be too saturated. So we might just want to downplay the saturation a little bit here. A really cool way of grading is by using color lookup. Color lookup is like a collection of grading presets. So just change the 3D LUT file and just go up and down, and you get these like really cool grades right away. But again, don't go crazy with this, because this can also destroy your image. So if this looks cool here, but it doesn't fit at all what I want. It's way too cold. I want to keep this area here way warmer. But that said, if you find some of this, you might just be able to try it out. Just like try the blending mode with this and just see if something works. Maybe you find something cool. What I do as well is, if I like certain parts of it, for instance, I like how the values are changing, then I'll set it to luminosity, which doesn't change the colors at all. It just changes the value range of the picture. And I kind of like this. I kind of like the look of it. I just don't like the color. Or if you only like the color, you can set it to color, which doesn't change the values, it just changes the color. Actually, this is kind of cool. Let's see if we can do something with this one. Let's keep it here as a maybe. I'm just going to duplicate it so I can try something else. This one is also kind of cool. Teal and orange, standard grading for any film. All right, I like the values here as well. I think the colors are a bit too crazy, but I like the values here. So set it to luminosity, and I'll get my old colors back, and I get this really nice, crazy grade right away. Let's see here, the colors on this one. Still don't really like this. I'm gonna try to just take it down a bit. And you can just see the huge effect the grading has on the picture already. So I'll just usually try a couple of these. Color lookup, and there's one here I want to try out, which I saw before. Let's see, this one. It's way too crazy. Way too crazy. Just go through some of these, because there might have been another one as well. No, it was bleach bypass. So this one is just pushing it way too far. But it's also kind of cool. It looks kind of like this kind of bleached old photograph. But what I'll do with this is, again, I don't like the color. So I'll set this to luminosity. Doesn't change the color that much though. But let's set it to luminosity and let's just decrease the value here a lot, or the opacity. This is just pushing up the contrast a fair bit in the picture. This does look cool though. I think I'll stick with this for now, to be honest. Because it does look cool. Yeah, it didn't take much to persuade me. Yeah, I definitely want to keep it like more color instead of this bleached look. Then we can also try with a black and white layer. There is something really cool with this. If we disable all the other ones, all the color lookup, we can, if we set this to soft light, you get this really like crunched result right away. It becomes more dramatic and a bit more desaturated as well, which can look really cool. It can be a really cool starting point. You can also try setting this to hard light and overlay, and also set it to multiply as well. Can also work pretty well. This also really depends on the image, but this is a great tool for your arsenal. Yeah, this is definitely crushing it too much. Let's see here, maybe a little bit. No, I think we're good without. I think we're good without the black and white. Let's delete this. I want to just bring the background out a little bit now because it's just too dark. So you can do this by using something like hue and saturation and just bringing the value up. Or you can use levels, Control L, and you can just bring it a little bit up here. This just changes the gamma of the image. That's kind of cool. We can also just change the hue and saturation, not the lightness, but just hue and saturation here as well. Just to see if we find something which works. So this is kind of cool. Then on top of this, we can also do a hue and saturation. Sometimes you get crazy and interesting results by going on everything, doing a master hue and saturation. We're probably not going to get anything interesting from this, but sometimes you get something very cool. I think it's cool. It's just, this is just not what we want. But it's really nice. I kind of like this as well. It's kind of like the sickly blue feeling. Oh, sorry, the sickly yellow feeling. No, I think it works the way it was. But it's worth trying out. Alright, let's say we have the grading to an acceptable point here now. I want to now paint a little bit on top again. You see this, the glow here? The glow behind him? I want this to bloom in front of him. So I want to go here and just like paint a little bit of bloom here. Set this to something like linear dodge or add or a screen to really just make it work. So the way I do this when I paint glow, I paint a big glow like this. You can see the difference. Then I paint a smaller glow as well. So we have like different levels of glowing. And then I can also paint like a sharper one as well. Yeah, that's a bit too much. The last one doesn't really work for me. It's too sharp. Do a bigger one. See if this works. This is more like almost like a lens flare. I kind of like this though. I think it's doing something interesting with the skin tones here. And also it softens out a fair bit as well. Let's try to add a little bit of glow here as well. This might not work at all. Let's just try to add a little bit of glow to this region. Yeah, I kind of like this. I kind of like this subtle glow as well. I'm going to reduce it a little bit now. Just erase it down a little bit. So there is just a hint of it here. Alright, so then a thing we definitely have to do as well, we definitely have to paint this shoulder here out. Same with the other one. The way we do this is, the way I do it, is I just paint it out. I just sample the color here by holding on the Alt key, and then I simply just sample it like this. And just paint it out a little bit as well. Alright, so the thing I want to do now as well is I want to add some kind of like atmospheric layer on top as well. So by doing this, or a way to do this is to add something like fire. So I have a fire picture here. I also believe this is from cgtextures.com. Drag it on top. And now we can set this to screen. And we get this kind of like nice atmosphere right away. I mean, fire is, it's completely overkill for this, but it's still kind of cool. I mean, we're not going to do this because that would be a bit crazy. But I just want kind of the particles. We can also take this, duplicate it around, put it in the background. And then we can also just play a bit with like what's behind him here. Sometimes this works. Sometimes you can just add a bit of like fire like this. See if this works. It does not. I just want to blur these particles a little bit as well. I want to blur the background particles just so there's a bit of like a parallax almost, or a bit of like depth just in the particles. So this is just filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. We just add a little bit of depth now here. And I'm just going to erase the regions here around the shoulder. Cool. So this is starting to work for me. I'm going to disable the particles. Then I'm going to use the biggest hotkey in the world, which requires 4 fingers. Control, Shift, Alt, and E. This is going to make a duplicate of the layer here. So now we can do something like a blur. So filter, blur, and iris blur. Iris blur is awesome. It just means you can kind of fake this depth of field view, or fake blur rather. We could do depth of field in Modo as well, but I feel this is not necessary for this character. I just want to blur the shoulders off a little bit. Let it just compute, and then we can see what happens. So it just blurs the shoulders a little bit here, and it just looks a little bit more appealing, I think. Let's see if it blurred the hair. Yeah, it also blurred the hair a little bit as well, which actually looks kind of cool. Yeah, I like this. I like the hair is a bit blurred. If it doesn't work, you can always just erase it using the flat out eraser. But I think it's kind of cool that it's blurred. Then we can also use a camera correct on this. Oh, sorry, a lens correction. Not a camera correct, a lens correction. Control-Shift-R to add lens correction. That's Control-Shift and R. Then we can add chromatic aberration in this. Chromatic aberration is something you generally want to avoid when you're taking photos. But in 3D, you can just add realism to it. So you can see here, we get this nice little fringe. And this is Control-Shift-R, and then Custom, and then you can add fringes here. I kind of prefer to use the blue-yellow fringe, and then we get this kind of like nice yellow fringe around the pixels. This blurs the image a little bit, and it makes it look a bit more photographic. We can also add a bit of a vignette here as well. You can add a vignette making it darker or brighter. In this case, it makes no sense to make it darker because it's already dark. But I want to make it a bit brighter actually. This can look kind of cool. Just brightening the corners a little bit here. And adding the fire or the particles. So I'm getting pretty happy with this. I would probably add a little bit of noise on top of this as well. So this is on everything. Control-Shift-Alt-E, click, get a copy, and add a little bit of noise as well, like 2% noise. You can see what happens if you add too much, like if you add like 5%, it just looks a bit too grainy. So about 2% usually works pretty well for me. And that's it. That's the final result of the tutorial. I hope it's been really useful for you. And if you have any questions or comments, or you just want to show off your work, please send us an email. And we'll be more than happy to check your work out and give you any kind of feedback you require. So thank you very much for your support.